I wanted to dive a bit deeper into the Citadelle and give context to why I felt disappointed after playing it, because I don't want to just sound like a hater, old good, new bad, because that gives too easy of a counter argument. Oh, that's just nostalgia talking. So I want to really go into this thing like pixel by pixel and explain what it is that makes me feel like, man, I like it, it's good, but they could have done so much more. So buckle in, we're going deep into this, we're leaving no stone unturned. I would give this map a solid 7 out of 10. It's half of a good map and half of a mediocre one. The Black Ops 6 Zombies motto continues to be, it's good, but it's not great. Let's start with the good. The castle entrance. This entire area is fantastic, if only the rest of the map got this much love. You know why this part of the map is so good? Because it's handcrafted. An artist went in and made sure everything about it is so uniquely designed that you could never rip an asset from this area and drop it on another map. It's beautifully worked into the overall area. The terrain is uneven. The left side of the entrance differs from the right side. You can go up on the castle wall. It's interesting. It has personality. It tells the story of, hey, this is a fucking castle. I also like the opening of the gate. It's creative. It's good shit. A siege on a castle. That is working with the theming of the map. Then we go inside, and things go downhill quick. There's no wow factor here. Hell, it barely even gives the vibe that you're in a castle at all. This is a castle imbued with magic. Treyarch, I want to be blown away when that door opens. Show me the meticulous detail. The cinematic experience we used to get all those years ago. You remember how the marketing back in the day, they called it a Zombies experience. This DLC pack, you will get a new Zombies experience. Now they just call them maps. Fuck it. They're designed with the same theory as the multiplayer maps these days. Why not? Now, let's do some comparisons. Resident Evil 8, a recent zombie game set in a castle. Similar development time and no question, far less of a budget. This is what you're greeted with upon entering RE8's castle. Now that has a wow factor to it, so methodically thought out in all aspects to grip the player immediately. And most importantly, it has the vibe of a horror-filled castle. There's no mistaking it. You know where you are. It has the grand spectacle a castle interior should have. This game came out years ago on a smaller budget, and yet the composition of the room is better, the lighting is better. It makes sure everything you see fits with the theming to hammer home the location. Why are all these things missing on Citadelle? They had the time, they sure as hell had the money. Now, if you think RE8 isn't a fair comparison, let's keep it Treyarch Zombies, Der Eisendrache. They're different castles, we can't do direct comparisons, but let's pick a similar-ish room. Look at the mood to this shit. The stained glass windows, the arched sunken design around them, which is an extra mile they didn't need to go. The epically detailed fireplace. Now, there's still a lot of negative space, which is a criticism of new zombies, but at least they cover the floor in medieval rugs to break up the repeated floor texture, something they don't bother with anymore. You have these wood supports to add another pass of detail that wasn't necessary, but they put it in there. There's almost no basic flat walls to be found. Everything has some little piece of flair layered onto it to set it off and look more lived in and more cinematic. Blundell knew the assignment. The theme is medieval castle. Let's go all out with it. This room by itself looks like the artist did 10 or more passes, adding extra bits of detail until it was perfect. Citadelle doesn't really have any of this on the inside. The pillars are just basic blocks in comparison. The walls lack the clutter to give it that lived-in feel. All the hallmarks of a medieval castle can't be found anywhere. Wood supports, stained glass windows, old-fashioned rugs. What gives this room any personality whatsoever? How about some torches on the wall to give it moody lighting? Anything. Let's go deeper. And this is where it really falls off the rails, because this first room is probably the best of all of them. I mean, what is this? Is it unfinished? Did they just forget to add any single discernible piece of personality? And look, Our old friend, the repeated floor texture with nothing to break it up or give it any kind of vibe, we meet again, and we will meet a few more times as we get into the other areas of the map. So, let's compare again to a similar wood-themed room in Der Eisendrache. Look at the clutter against the walls. There's so much shit that was made just to set this off and give it an atmosphere. And the other similarly themed wood rooms have different arrangements and assets, not just a copy and paste. The floor is covered in dirt tracks and old-fashioned rugs to break up the monotony of it just being a tiled texture. In the digital world, some things just don't translate on screen. You could make a perfect replication of a real-life room with Ultra 4K ray tracing, and it's not going to look that interesting. It doesn't translate. You have to add little pieces of business to give it that personality and set the mood. New zombie maps don't do that very often. They give you the bare minimum because people eat it up and say, this is an S-tier map, so why put in more effort if no one cares? Someone can just look at the classic zombie maps and say, well, it has this, this, and this, and the new map follows that checklist. Instant classic, ignoring the context because the game isn't played on a spreadsheet and the intangibles can't be measured in that way. On the same topic of bland realism, let's leave the castle for a second and look at the basement in Spawn. Same issues. Yeah, it's a basement. It also looks bland as fuck. As an artist, knowing that digital recreations of real locations don't translate, you have to add little bits of flair to give it that cinematic look. So let's compare it to a basement in Gorod Krovi. First thing you notice, it's flooded. Common occurrence in basements. And it was the artist saying, you know what? A basement is a pretty fucking boring location in video game world, so we need a little piece of business to set it off. Now, I am not saying the basement on Citadelle should be flooded. If you think I'm saying they should just copy old zombies, you are missing the point entirely. I don't want them to copy anything. That's a terrible idea. Please, no more manglers. I want them to think about ways to make these maps look lived in and interesting. In the old zombies, every single room on every single map had one standout gimmick to give it a little personality. In Cold War and Black Ops 6, you could count on one hand the amount of rooms that were given that extra attention to detail. The Particle Smasher and Die Machine being one example of Treyarch putting the extra work in, because otherwise they looked like interchangeable rooms you could have slapped onto any map. Back to Gorod Krovi, look at the ceiling, all kinds of clutter and random pipes and chipped away concrete, wires hanging all over. On Citadelle, nothing. It looks like it could literally be your own basement, right? Just throw some heating pipes up there like it's a real-ass house and call it a day. We can go even further back. Black Ops 2 Town, the classic. Same kind of wood flooring, but it's all distressed and torn up, charred from fire. That's 12 years ago. They knew to add this small detail to set the mood. So what happened? And I don't want to hear, oh well, based on the lore, this is a newly renovated basement. Then why the fuck pick that as your setting for a zombie outbreak? This is what bothers me. Not only in 10 years have we not progressed forward, as you would expect, we haven't even reached parity with their previous work on a technical level in terms of purely art design. We've gone backwards. Half of the areas on Citadelle are so devoid of anything interesting or any reason to even go there, it feels like they exist only to pad out the size, not to help set the tone of what you're going to experience as a player. What about the first room? Gorod Krovi's first room has a similar setup. Now, unless you're seeing something I'm not, these are incomparable in terms of detail. Gorod Krovi is 10 years old and looks like it came out yesterday. Citadelle is brand new and looks like an early-gen Xbox One game. It's got all the ray tracing bells and whistles and doesn't look half as good. It's clean, it's basic, there's not a single bit of visual nuance, no real cracks in the concrete, no grime, nothing. Why not have one of these vehicles next to the fountain crashed into the statue and now it's slightly bent over? Just something to tell us a story of how shit went down. It's a zombie apocalypse for fuck's sakes, not Hotel Simulator. This is a continuing theme since Cold War, and Liberty Falls is the worst offender, where it looks like they got their 3D asset and slapped it down on the map. No attempt to work it into the surrounding geometry to feel like it belongs. And there's plenty more examples of the lack of handcrafted design to make stuff fit into the world. Now, we could go on for 2 more hours breaking down these basic-ass ugly rooms, but you get the gist at this point. You're like, please shut the fuck up about the beautiful floors. I'm not a handyman, I don't give a shit. So let's talk theming. Something Treyarch used to go so hard with, especially from Black Ops 2 onward. Every map had a unique theme, and everything on that map was designed to fit into it, not just slapped onto it because, well, it's zombies and this fits the checklist. No, specific things for each map designed to look the part. How about the SAM trial machine? The old maps all had challenges, but the mechanism of activating them was always uniquely designed to fit the visual theme of the map it was on. Origins had the tablet, Zetsubo had the stone pillars, Gorod Krovi had the graves. Now, we get this big metal thing plopped down on a medieval castle, and goddamn does it look out of place. Now I will say this, I think it's a great design. It looks cool, it looks like Treyarch Zombies, but it doesn't fit the map. What about perk machines, Origins, a slight redesign for them to fit the steampunk aesthetic? Now being fair, they don't always redesign the perks for each map, but it was something they thought about. It wasn't just put on the map because it needed to be there. It was worked into the aesthetic. There's no sign of that anymore. It's a medieval themed map, go crazy. The fast travel is just a copy of the one from Zetsubo. Why not go nuts and make it a trebuchet that launches you to the other end of the map? It fits the theme and it would look cool as fuck flying over the map. What about an upper level of the castle that lets you go all the way to the top of the tower and do the world's biggest dolphin dive? Or shoehorn in their love for Warzone ziplines and have one that takes you back to the start. Just reskin it to be made of wood instead of metal. You could even have the setup for it make it look like it's some kind of gallows where people are hanged and they've reworked it into a makeshift zipline. Work the theme of the map into the mechanics. They did this year after year, map after map. Now they don't bother. The wonder weapons, no complaints here from a design aspect. They look good, they fit the theme, and to be fair to the current team, they usually get the wonder weapons right. The Ray K was awesome in Cold War. They've done good with these and continue to do so, but why not a few more? Medieval themed weapons and equipment. They have massively scaled back on doing this. We used to expect a multitude of map-specific equipment to fight the zombies. Not so much anymore. I don't know what has happened to the map-making process at Treyarch. I don't know the internal politics. Is it Activision not allowing as much creative freedom? Is it less budget because of a focus on Warzone? I don't have the answers for why. It just doesn't give off a castle vibe outside of the entrance. A single, well-made, handcrafted area. What about the rest of it? In older zombie maps, they scouted real-world locations and built off of that. This game's budget is hundreds of millions of dollars. Give the slaves in the sweatshop a break from making cosmetics and send them to do on-location photography as a reference. At worst, it's a good morale boost for the office. Now, maybe they did that for Citadelle. And if they did, they must have scouted out the most bland and ugly castle they could find. Or maybe the cameras they used had the memory card get corrupted and they ended up with nothing. I don't know. I'd just like to see them fully commit like the old days. Because these days, I see half measures. I see corner cutting. Maybe that's just the acceptable level for modern gaming. But if Capcom and From Software and Remedy can still craft incredibly detailed atmospheric worlds, then so can Call of Duty, when they got 8 different studios helping them make it. So that's just my opinion. If you think it's the greatest map ever made, that's fine. You might want to get a doctor checkup, but still, I am not an influencer here to dictate your opinion. You are free to love or hate anything you want. This is just how I see it, viewing it through a more critical lens, and I can't see it any other way. It's like that movie They Live, like I fucking put on some glasses and I'm seeing something different from everyone else. I don't know. There's just no great attention to detail. They're not bothered with the small things anymore, and maybe that doesn't bother you either, but I hold them to the standard they themselves set all those years ago, and I don't think they're reaching it anymore. Now, let's be clear, I don't hate the map. In fact, the opposite, I like it. It's the best map we have gotten since Black Ops 4. That's 7 years ago. This is progress, but admittedly, very slow progress. It's a map loaded with areas that don't hold up to even basic scrutiny because of how basic they are. If this entire map had the same dedication put into it as the castle entrance and the boss fight, it would be legendary. Instead, it's bogged down by pointless filler rooms. Why come up with an aesthetic and then have half of the map do nothing with it? I also understand Call of Duty has a vastly different audience these days. Most people playing this don't care about any of the stuff I just mentioned. They only care about the broad strokes, and for the most part, it delivers those. But they used to do all the little things just as good. And it's the little things that show the passion, stuff that you might miss at a glance, but they still did it anyway because they were passionate about what they were creating. Outside of the visual design, if we dived into the gameplay, well, there's really nothing to dive into. It plays exactly the same as every map since Die Machine. The gameplay is lacking any kind of unique feeling. It's gaming fast food at this point. And you may say it always was, but I disagree. You remember back in the day, if you were gonna play zombies with the boys, everyone had to agree on what map we're playing because depending on what map we picked, you had to be prepared for what you're getting into. That's no longer a discussion because it doesn't matter. They all play identical to one another. We could have this same conversation about the multiplayer, but that's its own 20-minute video. So, to wrap up this university dissertation on art direction, and I'm expecting your homework by tomorrow morning, I enjoy Black Ops 6 Zombies. It's fun. Video games are supposed to be fun, and this game delivers. I even like Liberty Falls, probably my favorite map on the game. It has an incredible layout for a zombie map. Doesn't look the part, looks like a multiplayer map, but the layout is great. Terminus has its moments of great atmosphere, especially riding around the boat. Citadelle at times looks amazing, especially at the castle gate, but they have yet to put it all together in one place. They're trending in the right direction, but have yet to hit that home run. And maybe my expectations are too high. It is Call of Duty after all, not Elden Ring, but there was a time when Zombies stood out precisely because it over-delivered on what you would expect from a Call of Duty game. It felt like Zombies was a passion project that somehow got greenlit by the Activision machine, and these days, Zombies feels like it's just part of the checklist each game has to include.